My name's Michael Coates. I'm a former firefighter, but I'm also a former soldier. And it's the stories from the individuals within this military community that I'm desperate to document. Love, patience and cake. Our next guest is one of the military's best kept secrets. We speak about her childhood, working as a nurse, and her own trauma injury. We also speak about why she bakes cakes for our injured service personnel and why it's now her life's work. Episode 37, Kath Ryan. This is Declassified. Kath, where was you born?
I was born in Harborne, Birmingham, a few years ago.
Yeah, well, look, I'm not going to probe on the year you was born. But was it a good childhood?
It was. We were a basic working class family, and we didn't have a lot, but we had lots of love.
How many is he?
I had 2 brothers and 2 sisters.
Really? Well, what position are you in the?
Second oldest, so I'm the bossy one.
Which one's older than you?
Danny, my brother's older than
So
me.
you're the matriarchal sister.
Bossy booch, yes.
What did your mum and dad do?
My dad was a coach driver, and my mum worked at Telephone House as a telephone operator.
Yeah. And what was kind of day-to-day life like growing up?
It was great. We had great fun and go to school like most people, and then come home, and we were in the guides and the brownies and the scouts. And so we were always brought up to do volunteering and work with charities as we were growing up as well.
Oh, well, so it was a really loving kind of outward family, not
Absolutely.
much, but we'll give everything we can.
Oh yeah, my mum was an incredible woman. She used to adopt all the old people in the street. So on Christmas Day, she would feed all of them before she fed us, and sent us off with little plates of Christmas dinner to all the old people, and an individual Christmas pudding. Then when we'd fed everyone in the street that was elderly, we sat down for dinner. But we thought everybody did that, and every mum's did it.
Really?
Yeah, she was amazing.
That is amazing. And why was she like that?
I don't know, she was just one of the most kindest, gentle, generous people you could ever meet. Absolute heart of gold. She was wonderful.
It's amazing, isn't it? Well, we can see where you get it from, but we'll get there in a little while. And your dad was fully supportive of that as well?
Oh, completely. He was a big softie too, actually.
Was he?
Yeah. He always used to come home with animals, like a little menagerie in the garden.
Really?
Yeah.
When was I suppose, cake baking brought into this then?
Well, every Saturday night was homemade cakes with Mum, and we'd had a big crock bowl and an old wooden spoon in those days, none of your gadgets, and we'd spend hours baking with Mum on a Saturday night, and then sit down and enjoy it on Sunday for tea.
How old was you when you first started baking?
Oh, we must have been only toddlers, really, 4, 5, and it was just great fun. You know, we thought it was great night in, sort of having a good old bake. And the thing was, you'd got something at the end of it as well, so you could see it, and then you'd go off to bed happy knowing you'd got your cakes for tea the next day.
Was it a family affair? As in, did all the kids get involved?
They did when they were little, but then as we got older, I was really the only one that kept it up. The others just kind of lost interest, really. So
yeah. Did your mum did she kind of write everything down, or was it just like a bit of this, a bit of that?
She wrote a lot of her recipes down. She adapted a lot of the recipes, and I've actually got quite a few of her recipes at home. So
really?
Yeah, very, very privileged to have those as well.
And
the basic ingredient was love.
So good. The 1979, you started working in a adult hospice.
I did indeed.
Why was you drawn towards that?
I just felt that it was something I would like to do, and I just wanted to kind of help and care for people as well. And I'd thought of nursing, and I wasn't sure whether nursing proper would be my thing. So I thought, well, I'll just try as an auxiliary nurse first, test it out. And I absolutely loved working at the hospice, so much so that in the end they had to say to me, you need to go and train. And I kept saying, but I'm happy here. I love it. So eventually I did leave the hospice and started proper nurse training.
What was you doing in the hospice? What was, kind of give an overview of what the work would be?
Well, you would obviously do your basic patient care, bed baths, and getting people in and out of bed, and making sure that they were fed, and all sorts of things, and spend time talking with them as well. And you had that extra time so that they got to know you. So if they got any worries, they could pass them on and you could make sure they were sorted. And just a wonderful atmosphere, really, and a great team spirit with the staff and the patients.
Was the hospice stuff, was it all like end of life, making sure they have quality time?
Yes, it was. And a complete variety of ages as well. We had people as young as 18 right up to 80. So, everybody had a different story and a different experience, but everybody needed that care and compassion at the end of their life.
They're amazing places. They're magical.
They are.
Nursing properly started, though, general nursing in 1987.
That's right, yep.
So you'd obviously been the auxiliary nurse for a long time, and then going into formal training. And then, why was that so important? Why was the step to...
I think that I felt I could do more if I had more knowledge, that I would be a better nurse. And, if you were qualified, you understood the workings, you could kind of see when things were going wrong and help people out.
Do you think it came back from being a youngster and seeing your parents and the kind of community coming together?
I think so, because we were always brought up to care for everybody around you and to keep an eye out for people that could be in need of a little help. And just, like as I said, Mum used to do the Christmas dinners, and that meant so much to the elderly who often their families didn't visit them anymore. But again, we thought everybody did that. So it was like a natural progression, really.
And what was you doing? So you went from general nursing, and what would that entail?
Everything medical, surgical, so you would see a whole range of like chest infections, all that sort of stuff, and then surgery, so all sorts of operations from ear, nose and throat, abdominal stuff, and learning to care for people after operations as well.
Did you specialise in anything?
I did. I specialised in gynae-oncology, which was the care of ladies with cancer and looking after them.
Was you giving... what's the word? Was you giving care, or was you giving... Because it can be quite medical, can't it? Especially like kind of intensive care. It can be very medical, and the nurses are just making sure someone's staying alive. Whereas, was this still that kind of nurturing?
It was very much so. And I think in the olden days when I nursed, there was a huge focus on the whole person, whereas with the change to degree nursing as opposed to the way we trained, which was very practically based. I'm not saying nurses aren't good, but there's a different approach.
In what way? Not now, but what would you be doing back then?
I think you would have spent more time with the patients. There wasn't the computers to fill in. You didn't scan your patients. You actually spoke to them and looked at them. So if you walked on a ward straight away, you could tell if somebody wasn't well that day, because you got to know them as individual as well as their condition.
And did that form bonds between people?
Yes, it did. It did. And then equally, if the patients didn't feel well, they wouldn't hesitate to say, I'm sorry, I'm not well today. Can you kind of help me out? And you could sort out whatever was going on.
Did you provide cakes to your patients then, when you was a general nurse and a specialist nurse?
Not to the patients, no, but I did on a Sunday afternoon. Used to be quiet, so I would take stuff in so we could have afternoon tea with the doctors, and the nurses just have like 15-minute break and just a little treat, because it was hard work. It was relentless, really.
Really? The nursing?
Yeah. Especially because there were a lot of terminal care patients as well, and a lot of surgical patients, so you'd got to get your work balance right. And
is it relentless on a ward like that? It is.
It is. Most surgical wards really are hectic.
Because when people are involved, especially when they're vulnerable.
Exactly, and it's not like working in Sainsbury's. You can't stack them all on a shelf and think, they'll be fine, when I come back, because you never know what's going to happen.
Yeah, you was in nursing for a long, long time, and I say that with the utmost respect. 79 to 99. You was like on the coalface as such. What happened in 99?
I helped move a 27 stone patient. The hoist only lifted 20 stone, so it wasn't moving. Airway was compromised, so I obviously had other people help me, but it was difficult, and I ruptured a disc in my back.
Just go back a little bit. So it was a bariatric patient.
Yeah.
On the hoist, but it was emergency because the airway was blocked.
Yeah.
And then what was you trying to do?
Trying to move her up the bed so that her airway would be released and she could breathe properly and basically be okay.
Yeah. Did she survive?
She did. Absolutely did.
But
I ruptured a disc in my back, lost the feeling and use in my left leg, and the disc, instead of it just slipping out, it completely exploded and caused a lot of debris and damage in the spinal canal.
Was the immediate pain?
Yeah. It was incredible pain, actually. You couldn't believe you could have so much pain and live.
Really?
But, what do you do? If you hadn't moved her, you'd be facing neglect because she would have died because she couldn't, her airway was compromised.
Has things like that changed since
Yes, absolutely changed, yes.
The way people move, and especially with the bariatric patients.
Patients are now fully assessed before they come into hospital. They will have special beds. They will make sure an appropriate hoist is available. So there's a lot of forethought and planning goes into looking after patients now like that.
What happened then? So immediately in those kind of first couple of days and then weeks, what the treatment did you receive from the NHS, I suppose? Did you go on leave?
I was on sick leave, and you kind of think, it'll be better in a couple of weeks, so you kind of stagger around. But when it got to the point that I really couldn't stand or get to the bathroom, I thought, no, this isn't going away, is it? So then I had to have MRI scans and then physio. So I was on one-to-one physio in the hydro pool for a year, followed by one-to-one in the gym for another year. So that was 2 years constant one-to-one physio to try to get me back up and walking and get some use back in the leg.
Was that frustrating?
Very. When you're used to having a hectic lifestyle, to kind of suddenly be stopped in your tracks is, devastating probably isn't the right word, but you kind of feel that you're not as valuable anymore because you can't do as much for people, that you're now in need yourself and depending on others. So it is quite a difficult time.
Throughout that, did you always feel like you was going to go back to work?
I did. I never believed for a minute I wouldn't get better, despite the doctors saying, I don't think you'll walk again, and various things. And I just thought, no, I'm going to show you, I will. So it was a long battle, but a lot of perseverance, and I got there in the end. And I think I'm doing really well now, but some people would look at me and think, oh, what a shame, sort of thing. But I have a fabulous life now and do things that I never, ever imagined I would.
It was a long road back to recovery.
It was.
And to think, what was especially in them first couple of years, so you mentioned the physio and then the hydro pools and whatnot, what was the kind of main challenges physically to you?
Actually getting up and balancing and not falling over, because the leg was completely dead. Your brain then doesn't compute that it's there, so you just topple over, even though your leg is there, because you can't feel it. It was incredibly bizarre. And then because you couldn't feel it, you'd still have horrific nerve pain. So the pain was really bad, that it would take your breath away some days. So you had to find a position that was less painful, and then find routines and ways of getting around the house and getting in and out the shower that you could manage without too much trauma.
Did you avoid a lot?
You do. I did, actually.
And socially as well?
Yes, because what you tend to do then is do only what you know you can do safely and avoid anything that you can't. So stairs and steps and slopes and any kind of distance walking was an absolute no. It was just really difficult. So you would just do short things, and then you would only go to places where you knew the toilet was really near, that you could get a drink, that you could park, so you'd only have a little walking distance. So your world becomes a lot smaller at the beginning, but then obviously as you improve, it opens up again.
And that's what it's about, is it just keep making these small steps. And was you? I mean, you mentioned it earlier on, and you are tenacious. And was you goal setting, or was you going with the flow? How was you kind of?
I think I just had a very different outlook to the medics. I never believed, as I said earlier, that I wouldn't get better. And I remember being sent for counselling because one of the doctors didn't feel I'd accepted the enormity of my situation. I said, well, actually, I have. I'm just one step ahead of you. I said, this is the situation. Work with it. There's no good sitting being miserable saying, oh, well, I can't use my leg now. Woe is me. Look at what you still can do and find things you can do with your limits, really.
Did you have friends around you at the time?
Oh, amazing friends and family. They were excellent. So they were on a rota basis with picnics and feeding times and shopping. And I remember actually the first time I was able to go out shopping, it was months and months and months. It was so exciting to just walk down a supermarket with a shopping trolley, and I was just thinking, oh my God, but the shopping trolley was actually holding me up. But it was just that freedom, just to be out and just walking around. And I was just thinking, wow, you're in a real shop. Somebody else hasn't done your shopping. Yeah.
Was it a blow then when you was kind of retired?
It was.
Can you tell me what it was like? How did they tell you?
They were actually very good, because for months I'd had to be called in to the nursing officer, and they would sort of see how you were doing medically and physically, what you were doing. And then they would try and find you jobs, but all of the jobs that they gave were absolutely no good. You couldn't have done them, which was really sad. And then at one point I was thinking, are they picking jobs they know I can't do because they don't want me back?
Really?
Sort of thing.
What, because of the pain or the mobility?
Both. I think it was both, really. They were concerned that, I wouldn't function as a nurse properly, which was true, I wouldn't. And despite however many times in your own mind you can convince yourself, well, actually, I could do that, physically put to it, there was a lot you really couldn't do. And then I remember being told, which the most devastating thing was, you want to get yourself a little volunteer job where nobody's depending on you. And that was the most crushing thing I'd ever heard in my life. And I just thought, wow. And it just knocked me off balance for a while. And then I thought, do you know what? There is something out there for me. I just need to find it. So I learnt Russian. And one of my plans was then I thought I'd go off and work in the orphanages in Russia. And my brother said to me, you can't do that. You'll never come back.
Yeah.
So I didn't do that.
Yeah. Kath the orphan lady.
Yeah.
Kath
but
the
then,
lady.
Life has a way of throwing things into your path. And now I completely believe I'm where I'm meant to be.
I know we've described some of the symptoms of the pain, like avoidance and getting yourself into position, but can you describe the pain that you were in chronically, day to day?
Oh, it was like an electric shock going out of your back, down your buttock, through your leg, and trying to escape out your big toe. And I don't think you can explain it. I think you have to experience that sort of pain, of nerve pain, to really appreciate how bad it is. And I know, doing what I do now, I've seen people say, oh, it can't be that pain, and I'm thinking, you've obviously never had nerve pain to know what it's like. And you'll be sweating and you'll feel sick with it, and it'll take your breath away, and then you can't put your foot to the ground, you can't lie straight, you can't, to get up and down is really painful. Any change of position, it's like this electric shock going through you. So it can be pretty severe.
Was you on medication?
I was, yes.
Was it bad? Was you on opiates? What was you?
They put me on diazepam for a bit, but then after having like kind of nightmares and like everybody seemed to have two heads for a while, I thought, forget that, I'll stick with the pain.
Really?
Yeah. So some of the drugs would make you very ill. But then I was also qualified as an aromatherapist. So I used a lot of essential oils. Clove oil is like a local anaesthetic. So I used a lot of clove, rosemary and lavender, which helped on top of Voltarol as well.
Oh, really? So a little mixture, concoction.
Yeah. I was actually the first nurse in the country officially employed as an aromatherapist.
Was you?
Yep. Yep.
What year was that?
That would have been, about
The
83.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Back then?
Yeah, way back then, yeah. And I actually worked alongside the anaesthetist. They would prescribe aromatherapy massages as a way to reduce anxiety-induced hypertension.
And that was in the hospice?
Yeah. No, that was at the hospital, at the women's hospital.
Oh, was
then.
it?
Yeah.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Let's move back forward again. It took 5 years before you started walking properly. So we're now in 2004.
Yep.
And when we talk about kind of getting freedom back, are you still in pain at this point in 2004?
Yes.
So still in a lot of pain, but being able to walk.
Yeah. The leg was like it had a stroke, so it kind of dragged. And the whole idea was trying to get control back over the leg, that, I was in control of it, not in control of me.
Obviously, recovery was really important, and getting independence back and finding some purpose and meaning again, like we mentioned the Russian thing. What was you searching for?
I don't know. I just knew that I was meant to do something, and I just didn't know what it was at that point. I knew that being stuck at home was not my end of my story, sort of thing, to put it that way. But I didn't know what I was looking for, really. I wanted to do something to be useful again. But I didn't really have anything in mind. I knew nursing was a no-go. I did actually try operator for the phones, the emergency line. What did they call it? It's 111 now, isn't it? And I even failed that, but on medical grounds. So I was gutted at that. It was the first job I'd ever gone for and not got.
Yeah.
So I was devastated, but they were again concerned for the pain levels and sitting for too long and the distance to travel to the centre to, do the calls.
What's the hospital in Birmingham called?
The Queen Elizabeth Hospital is the big hospital.
Was that where your sister was in 2009?
She was. Well, actually, she was in Selly Oak in 2009. Okay. Selly Oak was still open at that point.
So your sister was in Selly Oak. What was she in, just for a routine operation?
No, she was poorly with, they thought she'd had a stroke at 35, but it turned out she got multiple sclerosis. So she was quite poorly. So she was in for a long time. And I took cakes in to cheer her up. And she shared some with some of the injured soldiers that were in Selly Oak at the time. Like most people at that time, I had no concept of what was going on in Afghanistan, and certainly no idea that the injured guys were coming into Birmingham. So she shared the cakes, and they said to her, "Tell your sister to bring us some on S4." So I said, I can't just rock up on the military ward. So I rang the ward and I said, is it possible to bring a little bit of homemade cake into the guys to cheer them up? And the nurse said yes. So I said, how many guys have you got? So I've got enough. And she said, at the minute, we've got 35. I said, no problem there then. So we arranged a day and a time, and I baked 12 dozen different, the Americans call them cupcakes, don't they? But we call them fairy cakes. But so I did lemon drizzle, butterfly cakes, chocolate cake, a whole variety to take in, thinking they would just take them off me at the door. And that would be it. Thank you very much. But one of the nurses said, come in and say hello. So I went in, and it was the most extraordinary encounter. I was touched by their humour, their courage and their cheek. And I just thought, wow. I thought, you've been shot, you've been blown apart, and you can still wow at a fairy cake. Yeah. And I went home and it haunted me, not in a bad way. And I thought, you can't do this only once. So I rang up and I said, do you think the guys would like some more cake? And the nurse said, would they ever? All we've heard is, do you think she'll come back? Yeah. And that was 10 years ago.
Do you remember who was on that initial batch? Do you remember any
I do remember a lot of them, actually, yes, which is quite strange. And they used to come in batches, so there were a lot of guardsmen in at the time. Really? A lot of rifles, a lot of Marines. So there was one guy, Squirty Cream Guy, which was his nickname. So he always liked tons of Squirty Cream on his Bakewell Tart.
I thought that was before he got there. That was his nickname.
No, he was funny. There were lots that I remember really clearly, and a lot of the guys from the Kazivac Club were there in the very first days as well.
Was it the guys that then really formed it and pushed on with that?
Yeah.
I mean, before we get anywhere near that bit, Was it a monthly basis, a weekly? What was it?
Well, originally I started every other week. I thought, don't spoil them too much. And so I fitted it in with my quiet life. I thought, every other week would be fine. And then they started having birthdays on the weeks that I wasn't there. And the one time the nurses rang me and they said, we've got a lad coming in from Afghan tomorrow. It's his birthday. Is there any chance you can do him a cake? I said, absolutely. I said, of course I will. And I made his cake and took it in. And bless his little heart, he cried his eyes out. And I said to him, I'm supposed to be cheering you up. He said, you have, love. He said, you don't even know me and you've done all of this for me. I said, that's the point, that you know that people who don't have to genuinely care about you guys. And he held my hand so tight and he said, you don't know what it's like out there. I said, no, I don't. I said, and I'm not going to pretend I do. And then he looked at me and he said, will you stay with me till my mum comes? So I did. I waited with him till his mum came. And then I thought, well, do you know what? May as well go in every week. So I did start going in every week to the boys.
What days was you going in?
Well, at the beginning, it started off, I used to have to find out what other visitors they were having and what was going on the ward. So they would just slip me in and out of whatever gaps they'd got. So like if there's a royal visit, I was obviously declared a security risk, so I wasn't allowed in. And various other, if any of the ministers were coming from the government, again, security, so I wasn't allowed in, which was fine. So eventually I also learned that military ward round took place on a Tuesday. So a lot of the guys then would either move on to Headley Court to rehab there, or they would be left in Birmingham for further treatment. And it was always quite a sad day. And then equally, as the boys got better, their families went back to work and back home, so only visited at weekends. So the week was quite empty. So I asked, could I do Wednesday nights, which seemed to be right bang in the middle of the week, that would kind of give the guys something hopefully to look forward to, a bit of cheer, and that they would, feel that they were still cared for, and then the families had the weekend with them.
Is that because, so if they stayed there, they wanted to go to Headley Court?
Oh, absolutely.
So it was a downer for them if
absolutely.
they stayed there?
Yeah. I remember one particularly, and he was devastated that there were 4 of them blown up together, and the other 3 all went to Headley ahead of him, and he was devastated. And I said to him, but you've got different injuries, different. I said, you'll soon catch them up when you get down there. I said, just be patient with yourself. If you could have gone, they'd have let you go. And he went, I suppose so. And then once he did get there, he surpassed them. He just, smashed his rehab completely.
Tell me about Jack.
Oh, Jack's an absolute darling. So I got spoken to by one of the nurses, because obviously when the guys were in intensive care, as they got better, the nurses would say to them, when you go to the ward, Kath the cake lady's there, you'll get cake as well. And Jack said, well, why can't you come down here? So one of the nurses said, would you be prepared to go into intensive care? And I said yes. So she was preparing me, saying, there's lots of drips, drains, catheters, bleeping machines. And I was grinning to myself because I thought, well, that's not an issue to me in the least. And I said, no, not a problem. I'll be absolutely fine. So I went down to intensive care, and it was the most wonderful encounter. His face just lit up. It was like a golden light, and the most beautiful smile you have ever seen. And he tucked into his cakes. His sister took photographs and still has them. And it just made his day. Just made his day. And butterfly cakes are his favourite, actually. So whenever I see Jack now, he gets a butterfly cake.
Really?
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you still see some of the guys now?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. That's one of the things that I find so moving and so beautiful. They treat me as if I'm part of their family, which is incredible. There's a bond developed and a respect that I don't think other people understand or ever will, because they didn't see the guys. I mean, some of the guys you'd look at, you didn't know how they were, alive to start with, and you didn't know if they were going to be there the following week when you went in. I never had a warning when I went in. The first time I saw the guys was when I was standing at the foot of their bed. So you had to be able to maintain some sort of composure and be able to see them, because at the end of the day, they'd still got the same heart and soul, the same hopes and dreams. They were still John, Tom, Robert, whoever they were. They weren't just a triple amputee or a single amputee or a guy with half his face missing. They were still living, breathing, real people. And I think that was very important for them to know that people still saw them as that as well.
Did you take it home with you? Was it hard?
I wouldn't say it was hard. It's difficult to explain.
Was it emotional?
It was very emotional. And it was what they would say that I found harder than what I saw. Like when they'd take your hand and kiss it and just say, thank you for making time for us. And then I'd go home and cry my eyes out, absolutely cry all the way home. But then I'd, crack on and then think, right, what can I do to cheer them up next week? So, if ever there was like Christmas and Valentine's Day, St. Patrick's Day, then I would theme the cakes and I would dress appropriately to try and bring a bit of cheer and a bit of fun to the ward.
How did you emotionally release going back home?
Just a good old cry, cup of tea, and just prepare for going in next time. Just say, washing up as well, obviously. There were tons of washing up, so that used to take a couple of days. So by the time I'd finished that, I was raring to go again.
The cake selection, and it's been something that's, I know lots of people who know you, of course, and who've been looked after and nurtured by you. And the cake selection was always something that I found fascinating, because before I knew you, I just thought it was just some cakes that you brought in. And then people were saying, well, if I've got diabetes now, I can't have sugar. Probably know what I'm talking about when I say that. And then also things like is it palatable? Can someone with missing teeth or something eat this, or do they need more calories? I know this. It's a leading question, but how was you baking the cakes to fit?
Well, I used to do a core selection, but each time I went in, I would ask the guys what their favourite cake was, so that I could make sure I got it on the trolley the next week. And you could guarantee when you took it in, they would say, oh, my nana used to make that for me. Or it was the first thing my wife made for me. Or my mum made that for my birthdays. So not only was it their favourite cake, but it was a wonderful source of comfort to them. And you would literally see them go somewhere else in peace of mind and smile and really just switch off and enjoy that cake. And it would bring back those happy memories and comfort to them. And then for those that, some of them obviously, as you rightly know, had their jaws wired together. Some had just come out of intensive care. So they weren't up to eating a big chunk of Bakewell Tart, Victoria or lemon drizzle. So I would always have a selection on the trolley of stuff like banoffee pie, chocolate mousses, lemon mousses, homemade, of course, not shop bought or packeted stuff.
Oh, of course, that filth.
And then if that didn't work, smoothies. I made them smoothies and would take a smoothie in, having strained all the pips out, so they just got the juice and the nutrition out of it, and just made it tailored for them, and which is extraordinary, because now when I see a lot of the guys, they expect me to not only remember their name but their favourite cake.
Do you remember cakes more than names?
I do, actually.
Yeah.
Yes, I do. I can look at them and say, oh, here's your cake, and then I sometimes have to fudge around till I remember the name.
Yeah, Squirty Cream Boy.
Yeah, yeah. So, but no, that was incredible. And one of the nurses actually said to me, in the olden days, way back in Selly Oak, they used to give them fat in a glass because they'd got so many injuries that they were burning calories to heal. And people kind of don't realise that you do use a huge amount of calories in wound healing, and especially with wounds on the scale that these guys had. So they would literally give them fat in a glass. It was vile. It looked like melted lard. So the nurses would say to me, oh, lad in such and such a bed, you really need to try and get something down him. He's not eating, he's not drinking, see what you can do. And I think no pressure there then. So consequently, a lot of the boys now saying, oh, you force fed us. Well, I didn't actually force feed them, but I was on a mission to help them get better. And the extra calories were helping with the wound healing. So not only was it a huge boost to morale, it really was physically helping them heal with the wounds.
What was you getting purpose, as in self-purpose, self-worth? Did you feel good for this?
Do you know, it was extraordinary. I don't know if I felt good for it, but I felt I belonged. The first time on the ward was extraordinary because I should have felt out of place. I should have been horrified at what I saw, but I didn't. I just felt straight away a peace and a belonging, which again, I can't, explain to people why I felt that. And what was extraordinary was the boys accepted me from day one as theirs. And there was that bond straight away. And they treated me as if I'd been there for years and if they'd known me for years. It was extraordinary.
There's one mini story about someone who was non-responsive. And I can't remember who told me about this, but they were non-responsive. The parents weren't responding to parents. You know what I'm talking about, so please carry on. So
this lad was one of the last to come in from Afghan and had been quite badly injured in a firefight. So I went on the ward and the mental health team nurse came over and she said, I don't think it's worth you going in. You're wasting your time. He's not talking to anybody. He's not even acknowledging his parents are there. There's a nurse in the room on one-to-one. And I said, I've never missed anybody out yet in the whole of the time I've been coming on the ward. I said, I'll go in. I said, his mum might need a cake and a hug. I said, it was as important to the families as it was to the guys. So she said, well, OK, you can. She said, but don't be disappointed if there's no response. I said, well, I won't be. I said, I'll be gentle. I said, I'll just go easy and see what happens. So then I met one of the nurses as I was going in and she said, you're wasting your time. I said, no time is wasted on these boys. I said, I'll go in, I'll see what happens and, we'll go from there. And she said, he's got a teddy bear. I said, has he? I said, have you seen mine? My trolley's full of teddy bears. So she looked at me and she went, oh. So I walked into the room and he turned round and it was like his eyes, suddenly the light came back into them. You literally saw the light come back into his eyes. And he said, you're an angel. I said, well, actually, I've come to lead you into temptation. And he started laughing. He took my hand and kissed it. And he said, have you seen my bear? I said, I have. I said, have you seen mine? And his was huge. It was like a big grizzly bear. So I said to him, I said, you do know in Native American culture, the grizzly bear is a sign of nurturing and healing. I said, you hug that bear all you need. And then he said, do you give hugs? I said, I do. So I went round and we had a mega hug. And he obviously had been listening. He just wasn't responding. And he said, do you go to Headley Court? I said, I do. I said, is there a hot date sorted then? He said, absolutely. And then he had butterfly cake, custard slice, carrot cake and a pint of apple juice.
Really?
Wolfed it down.
And he'd not been eating?
Not been eaten, hadn't drunk, hadn't spoken.
And he didn't know you before this?
No, never met him in my life before.
So those calories, that nutrition that you'd put in?
Yeah.
I mean, that's start his recovery?
Absolutely. Yep.
It's amazing.
And to this day, his mum writes to me every week.
Every week?
Every week I get a message from his mum.
How, at this stage, this is towards the end of the major traumas coming in. How was this being financed?
I spent all my own personal savings doing it at the beginning. And then when I ran out of my own money, I thought, well, I'm going to have to sell a kidney or turn to prostitution, neither of which would have brought in a stable income.
I don't know.
So I then started doing quiz nights to fundraise and talks to WIs and stuff like that.
But little by little, you're just keeping it going. I know you got into some financial, am I right in saying, a bit of difficulty? Just keeping going.
Keeping going, yeah, because at the beginning, it was very difficult because it was obvious the guys were a secret. You know, you would hear about those that had been killed, but you didn't hear about the injured, even though obviously I knew 30, 40, 50 a week were coming in. There was nowhere that was public knowledge at that time.
Is that what was coming in?
Yeah, yeah. And, you know, you just thought, Well, I thought if they're a secret, I have to be a secret in order to do what I do. So I didn't want to do anything that would jeopardise, the ability to go in and just bring this little cheer to the guys. And I think some people say, well, one of the boys actually said to me, you shot yourself in the foot there, Kath. And I laughed. I said, well, maybe I did. But I know every penny I've raised has been raised with love and used with love. And you can't beat that. That's the essential thing. It's not about having a huge bank balance. It's about showing compassion and love for a fellow person in distress. And a lot of the guys will actually say that to you. One of the guys said to me recently, he said, you turned up at my darkest moment when life didn't seem worth living, and you managed to bring light, love and laughter back into my life. I will never forget that.
I'm feeling that the cake is the inn.
I think it is.
And then beyond that, there's counselling and guidance and love.
I don't think I counsel. Well, I don't. I don't counsel.
Not formally. Not a formal counsel,
Yeah.
but more of encouragement and guidance.
Well, exactly. And, they used to love a hug as well. And that used to be quite comical because there were two distinct types of hug. Although actually I've learnt there's three now, but the one we won't discuss. So the first one was like a rugby tackle, and they would just mangle you. And no words were necessary. You could feel they were saying, thank you for being there for me, thank you, and some of them would say, I don't know how to thank you, but they didn't need to. And then there was one where they would just put the head on your shoulder and sob broken-heartedly. And I just hold them. I didn't need to ask anything, didn't need to know anything. You knew they were having a bad day. And then you would feel this sigh and this release. And then we'd just crack on.
Was the military community helping?
A lot of them were very supportive. Some weren't. It was a mixed response. Some thought that I was a danger to the boys, and others thought that it was the most incredible help, not only to their physical healing, but to their mental health healing as well.
What about friends, neighbours, things like that? Were they getting involved with you?
They had to. They had no choice. Yeah, I kind of volunteered a lot of people to help me and to do things. And neighbours one day, I see, suddenly you remember stories that you've forgotten. My ovens had died halfway through a massive bake. So I rang up three of my neighbours. Fortunately, they were all in, and my nieces and nephews were visiting that day. So I then made all the cakes, and my nieces and nephews were running around the houses putting them in the ovens. Then the neighbours were ringing saying the cakes are done, and they'd run back and fetch them. So yes, I've had a lot of support from people, a lot of support.
Did that feel good? Did you feel like was it like a cake movement?
Yeah, it did actually. And I think, because at the beginning I was also told that I was the only one that was allowed to bake, so that if I poisoned anybody, they would know where to come looking for me. So I just laughed and I just thought, fine. So that's why I do and still do all the baking, so incredible. But it was nice because, as I say, they're not mine. They're everybody's responsibility. You mean
the boys?
The boys, yeah. Although they will sometimes argue and say they are mine. But we should have that shared responsibility. We owe them at least compassion and acceptance and a bit of love. Everybody does for what they've been prepared to do for us.
That generation, the ones you're talking about, the people that was going through just an incredible breed because they've had to be. I'm proud to know a lot of these guys that you helped. Really, really I am. Physical wounds is one, and Selly Oak and Headley Court. But then you got a message like maybe pleading, certainly asking you to go and see somebody because they knew you'd make you feel better.
Yeah.
That was in a psychiatric unit.
Yeah.
And could you just explain?
Yeah, I got a message saying, I'm in hospital in Liverpool. I know I'll get better if you come to see me. So I thought, that's just a strange out of the blue message. I hadn't seen the lad for quite a while. So I messaged back and said, what's going on? And then he said he'd been sectioned. So to be sectioned, you've got to be really, really, really a danger to yourself and to other people, more to yourself, really. So I thought, okay. So I said, okay, I'll come up and see you. So I rang the unit and checked and realised that it was actually a secure unit, which I, was thought, wow, that's quite a tough thing. But I went and I took enough cake for the unit. And it was extraordinary, because when I got there, one of the nurses said, all he's done is talk about the cake lady. And they said, we thought you were a figment of his illness at the minute, that you were just, part of psychosis, and that, you didn't really exist, that you were just something he'd made up, until his dad had gone in. And his dad said, no, the cake lady does exist. She was at Selly Oak. She really does exist. So I went in and he gave me the most amazing hug. And I thought it was never going to let go. His face again just lit up, and he said, I knew you'd come. And I thought, thank God I did. Do you know? And what was terrifying about that place was you had to go through so many locked doors. So you'd go in the front door, they'd lock it behind you. You were then in another door would open. You'd stand in this like little square. The door would lock behind you. The next door would open. You'd then walk the length of the corridor. You'd meet another locked door. That would open. You'd stand in the next little antechamber. The door would shut and lock behind you. The next door would unlock and open. And I went through about 7 doors like that, thinking, good Lord above. Do you know?
Why is it locked like that?
Because of it being a secure unit, I assumed that a lot of the patients in there were really dangerous.
To themselves?
To themselves and to others. So, but then when I got to the area where this lad was, it was amazing. And you could see that people were very, very poorly in this area. And what was extraordinary was he took on the role of cake lady. I didn't actually give out, although I'd taken cake for everybody else, he did it. And he just lit up, and there was, I thought, a patient in the corner, but it turned out to be a nurse who was watching the proceedings. And I'd actually said to them, oh, would you like cake? And that's when I realised, because they went, I'm a nurse. I thought, oh, God, couldn't tell, could you? So he gave cake to all the other patients and was saying, oh, this is really lovely. It'll cheer you up. It'll make you feel good. And then he said to me, he said, you know what? He said, I'm going to start baking cake. I'm going to have a cake round in here every week. And then the nurses said to me afterwards, normally he just sits in the chair and rocks and doesn't talk. We've never seen him so animated. And I just thought, wow. And he did get better and started his own little business up as well.
Really?
Yeah.
It all started with a cake.
Do you know? And a bit of love. Yeah. A lot of love.
A lot of love. How often do you see the guys who you've connected with over the years?
Well, it varies. I get invited to an awful lot of weddings, christenings, birthdays, events that the boys are at, like at the Declassified Club. I'm very privileged to go to that and support them and their families.
One of only 2 people that are allowed in.
It's only buns they're after, really, isn't it? You know?
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's a huge privilege. Joking aside, that is a huge, huge privilege. And I feel very blessed and just in awe, to be surrounded by these guys. But there is that bond. I know what they were like when they first came in. So there's that understanding how far they've come. But there's not a day goes by I don't get messages from the guys, not a day. So a lot of them will keep in touch via Facebook or Twitter or personal, phone numbers. So, sometimes you'll get a message saying, oh, just thinking about you today, miss your cakes. Or I could do with a cake lady hug today. Or, I need topping up with love and blessings. Because I always told them there were no calories in the cakes, that they were full of love and blessings. And that's really sweet that, that they will now say, oh, I need topping up with love and blessings. Because like they're big burly blokes, aren't they? They're not kind of, little fairy girls sort of thing, are they?
Well, they're big blokes because they've been eating high calorie cakes for years. We've got Declassified Club, of course, and that's a way of connecting, especially to those that are really thriving and encouraging and kind of giving back's not the word, but finding meaning and purpose in what they're doing.
Absolutely.
And, we're things like Invictus. You've been to every Invictus Games.
Again, at the invite of the injured soldiers. The first one I went to was wheelchair rugby training in Birmingham. And I got a message from one of the lads who I hadn't seen in a long time. And he said, do you want to come up to the rugby training? So I baked a bit thinking I'd know a couple of the lads when I walked in. I knew the entire team. I was nearly overcome, actually. I was thinking, my God, I haven't seen these guys in ages. So it was like a mega reunion. So then I started going every week that they were there. I would take the cakes up. And again, there was kind of, have you got my favourite? So I thought, well, once I knew who was there, then I know what I can make, sort of thing as well. So
How did you get to Florida?
Florida was amazing. The guys saying, you've got to come and support us. I said, I can't afford it. I said, I really have literally got no savings left. I said, I don't have anything. I said, I can't come. I said, I'll be cheering you on from home. And they're going, that's not good enough. You've got to come. So a couple of weeks later, I got a phone call from one of the boys saying, you need an Esther. I said, what's an Esther? And he said, you're coming with us. He said, we've been given 2 places by the British Legion. He said, I'm taking you as one of my family members. I cried my eyes out. Now, that really did make me cry. I couldn't even speak. I just thought, wow, he would do that for me, just for cake and, you know, a bit of love. So off to Florida, I went with the team as like almost a team mascot in a way, really. It was hilarious. And it was incredible because I got to support loads of the guys because I knew the entire team, obviously. And then, like the other countries, because the Estonians were mine as well. So I met up with loads of the Estonian guys at Florida and got interviewed by the Estonian papers as well. And the first question they asked was, how did you become mother to all Estonian boys?
Really?
And I just thought, wow. So that was a great reunion. Absolute great reunion. And then obviously the other countries kind of were thinking, well, who's this lunatic that's kind of running around, you know, sort of thing. But then as people got to know what I did, people were saying, wow, thank you. And I said, pleasure.
I mean, it's not just cake. And although it's love, it's you as well. And you are, I don't know if I can put it into words. There's something about you that like even just me personally, I feel very open to speak to you about. Like I feel like I've drawn towards you. I know Beth felt very much the same, and everyone around you is exactly the same. And we went to Canada.
I did. Another catalogue of miracles to get to Canada.
Go on.
Again, I said, there's no way I'll go. And they were going, but you've got to come. So my parish priest asked what Sunday that I wouldn't be at church. And so we had a collection that Sunday and they paid my fare to go out to Canada. Then the Federation of Birmingham ex-servicemen, who were all old boys in their 70s, 80s and 90s, they had a fundraiser for accommodation for me so that I could be out there. And then a great twist of fate was that as I was preparing to go the week before, the chap I was booked the accommodation with sent the bill, which was triple what we'd agreed. And I said to him, that's not what we'd agreed. And he said, there's high demand. I said, well, not from me. I said, it's way out my budget now. I said, I don't know what I'm going to do. And then one of the boys rang me saying that I heard you're struggling for accommodation. My wife can't go now. Would you like, her space? I said, well, if they'll let me, that'd be absolutely amazing. And then he said, you'll be in the hotel with all of us as well. I said, fantastic. So then I got a message saying, yep, that was okay. Then I got another message saying, do you mind sharing a room? I said, absolutely not. I don't mind sharing at all. So got to Canada and I was bunked up with 2 gay guys for the week. It was fabulous, fabulous. Their side of the room was pristine. Mine was like a jumble sale. So it was great. And they looked after me so well, so well. It was brilliant, brilliant.
And then on to Sydney. Has it always been, like you said then, and you went over it, but so many people are coming together to make this happen?
And I've never asked. I've always said I can't go, simple as.
Yeah.
I can ask for stuff if it's for the guys, but you can't ask for stuff for yourself. Do you know? So for Australia, the same. A little old man at church came over to me and he said, are you going to Australia? I said, no. I said, I can't afford it. He said, how much is the flight? I said, it's £900. And he went, oh, right, okay. So the following week, he came to me and he gave me an envelope with £900 in it. He said, there's your fare, you're going to Australia. I said, you can't do that. He said, it's my money, I can do what I like with it. He said, and it's not for you anyway. He said, it's my way of supporting the guys to send you out to them. And then again, the Federation of Birmingham Ex-Servicemen stepped in and they fundraised again and sorted out accommodation so I could have accommodation out in Australia.
Because accommodation is really important. It's not so much staying in a hotel, but it's the ability to cook, bake as well.
So in Australia, I was in an Airbnb and I think the poor bloke nearly had a heart attack when he saw me unpacking everything, and I'd been shopping and got all the baking out and he just stood there looking at it and I was thinking, sorry. But I was able to take stuff in every day then in Australia to the guys. And again, what's extraordinary, it's not just our guys, like the Canadians, the Australians were running over saying, oh God, we wondered if you'd be here.
Really?
The Dutch, everybody, it's just incredible. And then you just think, wow. And you think, when did you become all of their cake lady sort of thing, do you know? So again, such a warm community and such a bond again.
You're a registered charity now. You registered several years after you started, and you are obviously a small charity. COBSIO have helped you a lot with advice and guidance. Can you just talk a bit about how COBSIO has helped you as a small charity?
Well, they're brilliant. They look out for the little ones like myself, and they make sure that we understand all the documentation. And a few weeks ago, one of their people I met in London, and she went through a whole pile of stuff with me to make sure that I was fully up to date and I understood all the new regs that the Charity Commission had put out regarding various self-regulatory tools, and to make sure that we really did understand what our responsibilities were and that your trustees understand their responsibilities and where you could find extra backup and help, so that they've been incredibly supportive. And I think they find it quite amusing that they've got people like, say, the British Legion with millions and millions, and then you've got me the other end of the scale, really. So, but we're all doing a job that is of value. Although sometimes some of the bigger charities make you feel like the poor relative. But, at the end of the day, I think I'm the richest of all because I have so many of the guys in my life and I know them by name. They're not a number to me. They're not a commodity, You
was there when they needed someone, when you need that angel that led them to temptation. And you can't, there's no price, there's no financial cost. There's a time in history where people do things that are extraordinary, and it's often the people that don't get any of the credit because they don't want it, but it's often the people that hide away because they don't want to be at the forefront. And like you said, you didn't want to jeopardize your ability to be able to distribute and to bake and to bring that love to the guys, especially when they were needing them more than anyone would have ever known. A simple gesture, what that can lead to. And people love you, like not love like, oh, I love that. No, people love you like a family member. When I speak about you, ask questions to the guys who I know, their eyes change, their demeanour changes. I'm getting a bit emotional now because seeing these people, I just want you to know that the impact you're having for the rest of their lives, and they speak about their families, how you've affected their families, like the kids that weren't even alive then. Like there's so much more to this, and how can one individual do this? You really are incredible, and why has it been so important to you?
Gosh, I think it's difficult to answer. Why is it important? I think it's just that I feel I belong. I was meant to do it. And just to bring that little bit of comfort to the guys, that bit of fun, that banter, and to be there at their darkest moment. And one of the boys probably sums it up better than me, although I don't know how you actually do what he said I did. He said to me again, I'll never forget you. He said, it wasn't the cakes. He said, when you walked in, we felt loved. And I thought, wow. And I do love them. I absolutely love them with my heart and soul. And then he said to me, you gave us hope. How can you plan to give somebody hope? I don't know how that works myself. But, I look round and I think, well, thank goodness that, they have got that hope, that I was able to be there for them in their hour of need. And we never know the day that we will be in need ourselves and need somebody to support us. So really, it's just like a payback, isn't it? You give what you know you can give. But they've just become such a part of my life. It doesn't seem a chore or a job. It's just who I am and what I do now. And they are just a part of that. It's difficult to explain. And I think it's the same for them. They don't know how to explain me to people. If you've never experienced, I suppose in a way it's like faith. If you don't have faith, you will never understand it. If you've not experienced a cake lady visit in your darkest hour, you're never going to understand it.
Thanks so much, Kath, and we will leave it there.